Hello, this is Bad Vibes. In today's video, I'll be joined by InterScare, and the link to his channel will be in the description, as well as the pinned comment. Hit that like button if you enjoy, and sit back and relax. I worked at a store that was very close to my house, so I walked home every day. The map of the story is, there's my job, my friend's job, a traffic light, a small park, another traffic light, 3 abandoned stores, and finally a gas station. The only busy part of this route is the gas station. One day I was leaving work and it was starting to get dark. When I left, there was an employee fixing the electrical box of the store that my friend works at. I glanced at him, not thinking anything of it, and waved to my friend. She smiled through the glass door and I continued on my way. It was just another normal day. When I was exactly in the middle of the park, I glanced quickly over my shoulder, because I'm an anxious woman, and saw the electrician who I just passed walking behind me. Everything I'm going to tell you happened very quickly. When I looked back again, his eyes were fixated on me, and he had no expression on his face. All the alarm bells were going off in my head, so I started walking at a faster pace, more out of paranoia than real fear. So I looked again, this time more slowly, and I noticed his steps increased in speed just like mine. His expression had also changed to anger and impatience, like a hunter frustrated because the little rabbit ran too fast. I think deep down our survival instincts know when someone wants to do something bad to us by just looking at them. I haven't started running yet. I don't know if when I looked back the third time, my fearful expression gave me away, but instead of walking, he began to almost run and walk at the same time. His strides became so long it was awkward to look at, and so I ran. I had seen this 1,000 times on the news. The park was empty. It was just me and him. I knew what he wanted to do. I had my phone out in my hand, but the adrenaline was telling me to keep running and running. I ran the light and crossed the street, still not daring to look back. Maybe he was right behind me. What do I do? I thought after arriving to the abandoned stores, he would have given up. So I looked back one last time, and there he was, still not running, just walking super fast in a weird way. The adrenaline made me run even faster, and when I looked again after a while, he had suddenly stopped. The guy just stood there, his angry expression also fading away. His face looked blank. It was like he was staring into nothing, but his eyes were still fixed on me. At this point, I was already approaching the gas station, and he was just a small silhouette that didn't move. My heart was still racing and my hand was shaking so badly I could barely type the password to my cell phone. I kept walking and looking back every second. He didn't move an inch. I started to get paranoid, thinking that maybe he really was an employee, that maybe I was imagining things, that he wasn't really following me. It's like your brain just starts to justify the situation, so you stop suffering. When I was already at the end of the gas station and the adrenaline was slowly decreasing, my boss called me and asked me if I arrived home yet. I said no. He said that my friend next door was worried about me because there was a crazy man pretending he had tools in his hand and pretending to fix the power box. She said she was too scared to tell him to stop and just watch the weird mimicking for a while. But then I passed by and he turned and followed me as if he was literally waiting for me. My friend was so scared that she started to record the man in case something happened and was ready to call the police. After that episode, I changed my route I did to go to work and even started to use a bike. Guys, don't forget to always stay alert of your surroundings. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't realized as quickly as I did that he was following me. He would have reached me in seconds. I'm a 26-year-old female. I live in a flat building in a good area. It's a long, windy cul-de-sac, so there's not too many cars coming in and out unless it's people leaving or coming from work. My boyfriend is away to Thailand for a month, and we usually take our dogs out together at night. I went myself, which I was fine with. I usually feel safe. Last week, around 8 p.m., I left my flat to take my dog pee. My dog is extremely excitable, especially around other people. She just had her space surgery. She has a cone on her head and stitches that have to heal. I was waiting for my dog to do her business when a car pulls in and drives slowly past me. The guy did a friendly neighbor nod towards me, and I did a smile back, to be polite. The guy parks at the front of the building, and I'm on the other side of the car park, on the grass with my dog. I'm watching my dog, trying to get her to hurry up because I'm freezing. I look up, and the man has stood outside his car staring at me. Freaked out by this, I turn my attention back to my dog, keep looking over my shoulder, and he's staring with this creepy ass smile on his face. I looked away again for a second, and he was walking along the road slowly towards us. I'm a really friendly person. I can be paranoid and aware, as any woman should be at night, but something about him made me feel scared. He was walking so slow, as if he wanted to talk to me, so I hid behind a van telling my dog to hurry up and pee. I can't see him anymore, which terrified the life out of me. All I heard was footsteps coming towards us. The guy peeks his face around the van, and my dog goes nuts. She's jumping around, barking aggressively, which she never does with people, but this guy doesn't take this as a reason to leave. My dog is showing that she doesn't want his presence, but even though she's doing this, he continues walking towards us slowly. I start backing up and say to him, please leave, as she just had surgery, and she's too excited. In the most quiet, sinister voice, he asked, "What's your name?" I couldn't really hear him. He kept repeating the question. I eventually understood what he was asking. Meanwhile, my dog is still absolutely going nuts at him. I say again, "Please, my dog just had surgery. You need to walk away, she's too excited." Ignoring me again, he walks towards us asking my name, so I start walking away from him. He ponders for a minute, still smiling. Creepy, may I add. He eventually backs up slowly, still facing me. I swear he did this for at least 20 seconds. He walks back to his car, looking over his shoulder at me, then stands back at his car and stares another 3 minutes. I pretend my dog is doing something, when she was really just being a pain in the ass and just standing there. I look up and he's gone. I'm shaking, sending my sister voice notes about what's going on, and she's telling me, "Just go inside." But she doesn't realize I'm frozen in fear. Eventually, I see a woman and her son walk up to the front door, so I half jog over with my dog to go inside the same time as them. The front of our building has a glass door. I glance in, and the man is standing there, waiting for us. I told the woman, "This man has been following me and my dog. I'm scared." And she walks in with me. The man sees I'm not alone and walks right past us out the building again. I run into the lift with my dog, get in and lock my doors. I decided to tell my 2 male neighbors about it as my boyfriend is away, and they agreed to run downstairs if I ever need them. I took a picture of his car and registration plate as my twin sister gets the train home late at night after work, and I want her to be wary of him. Well, today I was out with my dog at 11 a.m., just doing our usual walk around the block. We walk into the building, and as we're heading into the lift, I see the guy peek his head around the corner. He's looking for me. Then he starts walking towards me. At first, I didn't recognize him, but then he smiled his creepy smile, and I realized who it was. He said, "Hi." So I said hi, then beelined it for the lift. He came towards me and my dog again. I pressed the lift button, just watching it come down from the 6th floor. He comes and stands closer to me. Again, my dog goes nuts at him. He asked me what my name was. He has an accent. He asked me again when I didn't understand what he was saying. I asked, "What, my dog's name or mine?" He goes, yours. I froze and said a fake name. He started to move closer. I had no time to pay attention. The lift was about to open and I could run away. He told me his name. I replied, "Nice to meet you." And finally the lift's door opens. I walk in and press my button to my floor, hoping that he'll leave me alone. He ran behind me as I walked in and went, "I'd like to see you again." What the fuck? Shivers ran down my spine. I was creeped out. I replied that I had a boyfriend, but thanks. As I said this, the lift doors were closing, and he tried to stick his hand to stop the lift from closing. Thank God they closed on time. I'm only on the next floor up, so I was afraid that he was gonna run up as he could see what floor I got off at. I stopped for a moment and almost pressed a different floor, but I just wanted to get home and lock the doors. The lift opens and he's not there, so I beeline it to my front door. There's a glass door to the stairs, and I swear I thought I saw him coming up. I ran inside and locked the front door. I was so confused by what just happened. Next thing I do, message everyone with an update. They told me to phone the non-emergency police number, even just to get it on record, so I did that, and the police arrived at my flat at 3 p.m. I explained everything to them, and they said I could either A, get the police to go to his front door and tell him to knock it off, or B, next time he does something like that, tell him to leave me alone, and if he doesn't, phone the police and it would be considered harassment. But for now, the police couldn't do more, which was fair enough. I didn't want to anger him at this stage, as it's not a crime at this point, but why can't he just leave me alone? I've clearly shown that I'm not interested. It annoys me so much that I can't even leave my house looking ugly as hell without someone being desperate for any female in the immediate area. I hate saying something's going on when it isn't, but I just have a terrible gut feeling. Update. I hadn't seen the guy since the last incident, but I saw him today. I again was out taking my dog to the toilet around 1 p.m. As soon as I left the main door, I looked and the guy was sitting in his car. He clocked me. I started walking past his car when he got out and said hi to me. I completely ignored him and walked on by. I was preparing myself to shout at him if he kept following me or talking to me. I went over to the grass and the guy stayed in his car staring again. I'm a bit further away, so I text my sister letting her know that he's at his car watching me. She didn't reply, so I phoned one of my male neighbors and he quickly got his shoes on and says that he was coming downstairs. I look back at the man and he seems to have his phone out recording me. I start shaking, working myself up to the point of confronting him and telling him to leave me alone. The next thing I know, my sister bolts out of the building and fast walks over to me and my dog. She says as soon as she came out of the building, she saw him back inside his car with the door fully open, and his back was turned to her because he was watching me, so she saw it this time. He looked at her briefly and watched her walk over to me. He starts staring at us both. That's when my male neighbor got outside and walked over to us. The man continued watching as I told them both I think he was waiting for me to go back into the building, because why would he just be sitting there? My sister had enough of it. She told me and my neighbor to take the dog for a walk, and she stormed over to the guy's car. She said, "Excuse me?" And he was shocked. She stood right in front of his car and explained that he needed to leave me alone, that I'm not interested, that I told him that the dog just had surgery and he wouldn't leave, which is unacceptable. She also said that I had already mentioned that I had a boyfriend, so he needs to leave me alone. He just stood there and mumbled a few times. She said he looked frightened. She walked back into the building, so we took the dog for a walk, and when we got back, he was gone. Probably got out of his car and ran back into his flat. I mean, he made me uncomfortable, so she did it to him. Now, if anything else happens, I'm phoning the police as they would then say it was harassment. I also contacted the leasing agency and sent them an email with all the details so they're aware. Thank you again, everyone. Feel much better now, and I'll keep you updated. I'm a female, and I was in my mid-20s at this time. I was working late one night at a secluded office about 1 kilometer from any other buildings and surrounded by a forest. I occasionally stayed late and would be the last car in the parking lot. This night, I locked up, walked down the trail to the parking lot, and as I exited the trail, I noticed there was another car in the lot. Despite the large size of this parking lot, it was parked directly next to mine. There'd be no reason to park in this lot unless you worked in the building. A man stepped from behind the car, looking at me. He was a white man, probably average height, slender, with brown, medium-length curly hair. He was staring at me with his chin down and a very serious, predatory look. I stopped walking. He was probably about 10 to 15 meters away from me. I debated returning to the office, but if this man had bad intentions, I doubted I could run back, get my key out, and open the door without him catching me. I decided to walk to my car and act normal. I said, "Hello, how's it going?" in a calm and confident tone while walking towards my car. He walked a semicircle around me, just staring at me without a change of expression. I kept him in my line of vision and made it to my car, unlocked it, got in, and locked the door very fast. He just stood there. I drove home feeling a little spooked, but wrote it off as just a weird encounter. Maybe he was high, who knows. I called the site security. Normally they would be at the main building, a kilometer away, and don't actively patrol where my office was. I told them about the encounter, and they said they'd go check it out. I never heard back, nor did I follow up. I went home. I live with roommates, and we never lock our doors. One was out of town, and the other one was at work until late, and would usually stay over at her boyfriend's, so I didn't expect anyone. I went about my evening routine as normal, and got ready for bed a few hours after the whole parking lot encounter. Just after I had gotten into bed, I heard footsteps coming up our old creaky wooden stairs. The footsteps continued down the hallway towards my room, but stopped just short. The floors were creaky in this house, and you could hear any movement, so no sound meant someone was standing next to my door for what felt like 30 seconds. I was totally silent and had 911 typed out on my phone ready to call. I heard a cell notification from where the person was outside my room, and then footsteps went back downstairs. I texted my roommate. The one that was at work called me confirming it was not her, and that yes, the other one was still out of town. I asked her to stay on the phone with me while I checked the house. I went into all the rooms upstairs, nothing. Went downstairs, and the front door was open. I closed it and locked it, and checked the rest of the house, including the creepy basement. All clear. I heard back from the other roommate. Neither of them was expecting anyone. I dismissed it as someone who was drunk. It was Friday, walked into the wrong house. I had heard a story of a friend who did that once, and woke up in his neighbor's place. This all happened in 2014. I thought it was a little weird that both of these incidents occurred on the same night, but never connected the two. It was during my last month living in this place before moving across the continent. Fast forward to 2020 when I watched Unbelievable, where a serial killer talked about how he stalked his victims, and I was often in their house multiple times before doing anything, and sometimes stalked people and never actually did anything. The more I thought about it, the more I think I was targeted by someone who knew my patterns. Perhaps someone who was planning something for the first time and couldn't go through with it. Do you think these two incidents were connected, or did I just have two weird but harmless encounters in one evening?
Hey everyone. So in 2020, I met this guy at a mall that I worked at. He owned one of the stores at the mall. It was a tech store to repair phones. Anyway, I would see him often because the office was close to his store. To be specific, right across from each other. One day he came up to me and asked for my name. We made small talk and we exchanged numbers. We started seeing each other until one night I was so tired from work I didn't want to go to dinner with him anymore. I'm a single mom and I get burnt out easily. I told him I didn't want to go anymore and he said, "No, get ready. I already made the reservations." I said flat out no, because I was exhausted, and I'm the type to refuse to be forced into doing anything, and being controlling is such a turnoff, so I was already getting ready to dump him. I said no firmly. He responded saying I'm on my way, and I said, "Well, I'm not going, so waste your gas if you want to." I didn't think he would come, but of course, he came. He showed up to my apartment and was non-stop honking outside. He was calling and texting me non-stop while honking. I threatened to call the cops and he didn't stop. I called the cops for a noise complaint, and as soon as he heard the sirens, he sped off. I remember waking up the next morning to 60 text messages and 100 missed calls, saying, "I can't believe you stood me up. I love you. What is wrong with you? I just wanted to spend time with you." The list goes on, but it really made me see him in a different weird, creepy light, because how do you love me if we've only been dating for 2 months? We weren't in a relationship at all. At least in my eyes, we weren't. Yes, we did have sex already after the first 2 weeks of seeing each other. What scared me was I remember when, after we had sex, he said he was a virgin. I'm starting to believe he actually was because of how things started to escalate. After he told me that he was a virgin, I didn't have sex with him again. So out of the 2 months, we only had sex once. He's Muslim, and his parents are very strict and crazy. He would sneak out to see me all the time, even though he was already 24 at the time. So after that night of him honking, I broke it off with him and called him a psycho. I told him I don't ever want to see you again. Now, we're in 2023, and ever since 2020 to now, he goes through weird mental states where in certain months he will blow up my phone, but he'll do it once out of like 6 months, basically out of the blue. I never respond. Until one day in October, he sent an apology saying I'm sorry. I've moved on. I know I was acting crazy. Blah, blah. And that he wanted to be on good terms as friends and asked if he can take me to dinner to make up for what he's done. I thought he was being honest because I hadn't heard from him in months. And I said, okay, so I went to dinner with him. Biggest mistake of my life. Because before we got the food, he literally got on his knees and begged for me to never leave him again and that he was in love with me. I'd never been so scared or freaked out in my life. I sat in silence to keep my cool and stood silent because I didn't know what he was capable of anymore. And I didn't want him to snap. I said, I don't feel good. Can I go home? And he drove me home. Once I got out of the car, I was so relieved and promised myself I would never talk to him again. I never spoke to him again. Ever since October of 2022, he has been texting my phone once or twice a week, asking to go to dinner, and I never responded because he makes me so sick to my stomach. I moved, thank God, so he doesn't know where I live, but recently he's been texting me to go to dinner. The last text was December 30th, and prior was the week before. It's just been very consistent. But recently, on Friday, January 6th, 2023, 2 days ago, he took a picture of me while I was working and sent me the picture saying, "That's you." It scared the hell out of me, because how could he know where I worked? I just switched to a different salon, and he didn't know the salon prior I worked at. At least, I don't think he knew. I've only been at this salon for 2 or 3 weeks. It makes no sense. My heart dropped to my ass when I seen the picture, and I responded, "You're stalking me. Leave me alone already." He said he has a limo service. and he was driving around when no way in hell he could have seen me through the window, because my station is the second station. He zoomed in to take the picture. There's a desk where he took the photo. It's so weird and creepy. I called the police and they basically victim blamed me and said, how do I not know the guy I dated's last name or his home address? They said since I didn't know his last name or home address, I can't file a restraining order or an order of protection. Please help. I know the laws are different in every state, but I am in Chicago, Illinois, and I don't know what he's capable of. Please help. Hey Reddit. I'm a longtime user, but due to the nature of this situation, I decided to use a throwaway. Trigger warnings for baby death, abuse, stalking, etc. Also, apologies if this isn't the right sub. We just need answers. My girlfriend's mother is a longtime heroin user and has been in and out of jail for my girlfriend's whole life. When she lived with her mother and her mother's husband, she witnessed physical abuse and drug activity. She was forced to move out at a very young age in order to stay alive. She thought her mother was finally clean when her mother announced her pregnancy. After getting over the initial shock, my girlfriend decided to be supportive of her mother, since she thought she was clean. That was until her mother overdosed while pregnant. She decided to cut all contact at that point. My girlfriend is also a mandated reporter, and last year reported her mother and her mother's husband to the state, since she knew it wasn't a safe situation for the baby. The baby died in their house not even a month after birth due to an overdose with signs of physical abuse. My girlfriend's mother was arrested for the murder of her baby and other charges. Her husband was arrested for child endangerment and other charges very recently. At first, the judge did not grant either of them bail. Eventually, her husband was granted bail, in which he posted. We did not know this until recently, which helped us put some of the pieces together. My girlfriend and I like to sit outside her house in the car and just chat or listen to music. Recently, there have been black cars around my girlfriend's house. She also is frequently followed by black cars when she drives me home. It's the same couple of black cars that do this. They're not just random ones. At first, we thought we were just paranoid since everyone was still in jail. But when we found out that the husband was out of jail, we began to doubt our insanity. The first major thing happened after my girlfriend and I went on a dinner date. We got home after dark and sat in her car for about 45 minutes before we noticed the same black car passing by us every few minutes. After 10 minutes of that, a different car drove towards us, flicking its high beams on when it got close enough for us to see who was inside. It swerved into the oncoming lane, and I genuinely thought it was going to hit the passenger side of the car. It sped away and we ran inside. After that, we started noticing the black cars more and more. This past Wednesday morning, around 3 a.m.-ish, the same distinct black van that we had been seeing pulled up outside of my house. This was weird, because my girlfriend and I live about 30 minutes from each other in two separate cities. A man got out of the van and shined a flashlight through my yard, scanning it almost. He shined the flashlight up at the window I was sitting at, kept it there for a second, then walked 30 feet to an empty driveway, scanned around there for 20 seconds before getting in the van and peeling away. The windows were ice-covered and frozen, so I couldn't make out the specifics of the van, but it was strange. A few nights later, my girlfriend and I spent some time hanging out in the car when we spotted a black van hiding behind another parked car further up the street. We could only see one headlight, but it creeped by us as we sat in the car. My girlfriend lives between two dead-end streets. Think of a very blocky U. She lives between the two prongs. The van went up the first dead end, 4 ways on, and sat for a few minutes before turning around and driving almost into the other lane of traffic to get close to us. It then went up the other dead end and stayed put. We thought it was weird that the van didn't just back out of the first dead end, instead opting to drive all the way up the narrow street and turn around. After a few minutes, we call a friend and recount the story just to get an extra opinion. While my girlfriend was talking to our friend, I got out of the car to go for a cigarette and to see how far away the van was. I walked up the dead end that the van was on for about 15 feet before getting the worst gut feeling I've ever gotten. Across the street from me was a black mass, which was darker than the darkness around it. I decided to just turn around and rush my girlfriend into the house. Later that night, we heard a bang coming from downstairs, followed by what sounded like a boot on wooden stairs. We locked the bedroom door and I sat against the door with a baseball bat, hopeful to barricade it. A few minutes later, we heard a car door slam before the sound of tires squealing and a car driving away. Our initial idea was maybe it came from the TV, but we had paused it, and the TV in the next room is never loud enough to feel real. When I went downstairs an hour later to get water, there was nothing damaged or missing. We theorized that maybe it was the sound of the front door trying to be opened, even though it was deadbolted. My girlfriend's exterior wall doesn't face the road, and we've never heard car sounds before. It is, however, next to a private driveway, and sometimes we'll hear her grandparents' car door close or the neighbors backing out. The next day, I was shoveling the sidewalks at my girlfriend's house, an activity that took about 20 minutes, and I saw the same black Chevy Silverado with mud streaks on the tailgate. It circled the block about 4 times. I was able to see the silhouette of the man driving through the passenger side window. And each time, it was the same man in the same truck. My girlfriend lives in a small town, and we were able to catalog the neighborhood cars. The black van and truck are abnormal. Our theory is that someone is trying to scare my girlfriend into not testifying, or flat out make sure neither of us ever have the ability to testify. We really just need more opinions. Are we just paranoid, or is this something we should actually be worried about? Do you think that these are just weird coincidences?
I was always an extremely small and sickly child. I looked young for my age. My family and I lived out of town about 8 miles out. Our little community was next to a highway. The school bus would always drop me off 2 blocks away from my home. One day, I noticed a red truck following slowly behind me, so slow that I figured that they were just looking for a house or something. I ignored it and walked to my house. That was the end of that. Consistently, this truck would follow slowly behind me. After a couple days of this, I walked into my house. I was always the first one home. When I got out, I looked out the window. Inside was an older man and a black lab. He was staring at me, idling in his truck. Then he pulled away. I decided enough was enough, and I told my parents. Of course, my sister was quick to jump in, saying that I was lying. I did have a habit of telling stories, but my mom thankfully believed me. She drove me to the bus stop the next morning. The red truck was there, across the street at a gas station, pointing towards the bus. I got on the bus and my mom decided to drive around the truck. She described the scene. The man was disheveled and dirty, hunched over in his seat just staring at the bus. His license plates were caked in mud, so she couldn't make them out. It freaked her out so much that she called the police and the school. I went to school and was quickly pulled into the office. The man had been spotted at the school, waiting in his truck. That day, I rode the bus home. This time, the truck was parked alongside the street. I would have to walk past the man's driver's side door to get home. I debated, considering running for it. Apparently, this man was getting desperate now that he had been spotted. A police car showed up and I talked to the policeman. They went to go talk to the man in the truck. He quickly pulled away from the curb and took off down the highway. Never saw him again, and I don't believe he was ever caught. Because of this experience, I'm extremely guarded and paranoid over my own daughter and her soon-to-be sibling. The world is a terrifying place these days, and children go missing so easily. I don't like to think about if I had been grabbed. I wouldn't be here typing this. My kids wouldn't exist. I was lucky. Many children aren't. So, stranger with ill intentions, let's not meet. So I'm a 28-year-old woman, and this happened to me when I was 13. I'm an adult now, but still kind of traumatized. For a little context, I transferred schools because lack of money. This school I went to was a cheaper private school, because where I lived, the public ones kind of sucked. I didn't have any friends for at least the first couple of months. I started noticing this boy, Victor. He was always staring at me during classes, in the hallways, by the window, and at lunch. It was an everyday thing, but I didn't care because as a kid, I only thought of stupid stuff like dolls or whatever. Oh, one more thing. I was flat as a table back then, so totally looked like a small child. The girls in my class started saying that Victor had a crush on me, which creeped the hell out of me because he was 18. I was creeped out but still didn't care, as long as he didn't approach me or anything. Things escalated quickly. Victor would follow me home every day. Thank God I've moved since and he doesn't know where I live anymore. The most annoying thing, however, was he constantly asked his friends to try to talk to me and convince me into going out with him and to make out with him after school. These talks would usually take about 30 minutes of them trying so hard to convince me to agree with this, while Victor was behind them watching the conversation like a freak. Obviously I rejected it all the time, but being the nice guy that he was, he started spreading rumors about us making out anyways. Nobody believed him though, because he was such a weird guy, and the whole school knew it. The final straw was when our school had a trip to a book fair. I was super excited. At this point, I had made a couple friends. On our way to this fair, I was on the bus with my friend, and Victor was also on, 3 seats behind us. I could feel his eyes on me the whole way. Out of nowhere, he came and asked for my friend's cell phone, and she gave it to him. Very stupid of her. He returned her cell phone not even 2 minutes after. She checked the cell phone and showed me he had taken a bunch of photos of me. I guess this was his way of saying that he has already done this at some point. She got so pissed and went to go talk to him. When she returned, she said the creepiest thing I've ever heard in my life. She said this with a very scared look on her face. He said to me that when you least expect it, he'll push you into a bathroom and rape you, today. The only thing that went through my mind was, what should I do now? I looked at him and he gave me a creepy smile. After this, I spent the whole day looking behind my back, not leaving the side of my teacher. She didn't even understand why I didn't want to walk around the fair. I was on alert mode all the time, and thank God nothing happened. When I got home, I cried in my room like a baby. This was the end of the year, thankfully, and I switched schools again. I told this to my mom last year, and she was like, yeah, it happens. It happened to me too when I was your age. So shocked how this is such a common thing. I'm now 28, and I still see Victor on the streets. He has followed me around a few times. I always walk in circles until I lose him, but sometimes he waits for me outside stores and restaurants. I think about what would happen to me at the book fair if I didn't have my teacher next to me the whole time, and wonder if one day he'll do something or just continue this creepy behavior. The story goes way back to 1998 when I was 16 years old. I was with my 2 friends, who I'll call Ben and Jake for privacy reasons. It was a late summer evening on a Saturday, and I was sitting in my room listening to some 80s rock, as teenagers back then would do. I got bored after some time and went outside to meet Ben and Jake. We were chilling in Ben's garage for a while, drinking beer and smoking a little pot. We got bored pretty quickly and went out to do some teenage shit. I remember we were walking down the narrow path by the woods that goes down towards the lake. Back in the late 90s, there was a popular hangout for teenagers there, so we were hoping to see some other kids there. When we arrived, there was no one there, except the sound of crickets in the taller grass. We sat on the bench for a while and just talked for about 15 minutes when Jake wanted to go to an old fishing hut by the lake. We all agreed on going inside and exploring it. We entered the hut. While Jake and Ben were walking around and breaking shit, I couldn't shake this feeling of being watched. We went upstairs where there was an old wooden boat laying there with a fishing net over it. We were kind of checking it out when all of a sudden we heard the wooden door to the hut creak open. We could hear heavy footsteps entering down below, followed by heavy breathing. We all stopped dead in our tracks and almost held our breath. There was around a 5-second break that felt like an eternity when suddenly the man spoke in a drunken voice. "I know you're here. Come out wherever you are, you little brats." The heavy footsteps started to walk towards the stairs as the older floor creaked underneath. Jake went inside the wooden boat and the rest of us followed. We put the fishing net over our heads and didn't move. The man arrived upstairs and we could hear him stumbling around. "I can hear you." We were sitting dead still, but I could feel the fear in all of us. The man was walking around moving stuff. I was thinking of a plan to escape without being caught, but we were literally sitting ducks. Suddenly, we could feel the fishing net being ripped off. "Here you are." Jake reacted the fastest and pushed him away, and the man fell onto his back. We ran like hell out of there and through the tall grass into the woods. We could hear the man give a chase, but gave up, probably due to his drunken state. We all went back to Ben's garage and fell onto the couch, exhausted. Jake told us that the man dropped a knife as he fell onto the floor. We all just sat in shock for the rest of the night. To this day, I can't help but wonder what would have happened if Jake didn't push him. Recently, I feel like my dog was uninterested in our usual walk route, so I took him to a different area of the town. Everything was fine, but a guy approached me. He made small talk, asked me if he could pet my dog, and I didn't feel unsafe as it was still daytime with a few people out, so I let him. Pretty much right after, he just left. It was strange, no bite or anything, just walked away. Later when I got home, I was getting texts from a number that I never heard of. This gets creepy as it's happened to other women, but the guy looked at my dog's tag for a split second, memorized my number. Creepy from the get-go, but he was so casual about it. Like it was a normal thing to do. Even though I blocked his number, I still have had run-ins with him in places far away from the original spot. So I'm pretty sure he followed me home without my knowledge and kept track of places I frequent. I'm getting the police involved, so don't worry, ladies. I know I can't really say much, but don't have a schedule that you follow to a T every day, and keep a hawk eye on anyone that pets your dog, or flat out reject it.